All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to break down a sermon from Southern Baptist preacher James Knight. It's all about the challenge of having an undivided heart, using Matthew chapter 6 as a guide. It's a really great look at how ancient texts get brought to life with some very modern storytelling.
Okay, so what's interesting is how this sermon kicks off. It doesn't start with some big, heavy theological idea. Nope. It hooks you with something everybody knows, a totally universal experience. You know, that childhood trick of playing your parents against each other to get what you want.
I mean, it's a classic move, isn't it? If mom says no, you go straight to dad. And this simple, kind of funny childhood dilemma, that becomes the central conflict for the entire sermon. The idea that it's impossible to serve two different masters who want two different things.
So, here's how we're going to walk through this. The sermon builds its case across these 5 key parts, and it uses some really powerful metaphors to get to its main message about focus and loyalty.
And that brings us right to the core scripture here, Matthew 6:24. It's all about this idea of division. The argument is plain and simple. You just can't serve both God and wealth. It's just like being that kid. Eventually you have to pick a side.
So what exactly are these treasures on earth that the scripture is warning about? Well, the sermon defines them as more than just cash. It's anything that's temporary, anything that's insecure, anything that can and will eventually decay.
And of course, that naturally leads to the flip side. What about treasures in heaven? The sermon really digs into this, though. It pushes past the cliché and asks, okay, but what does that actually mean for how we live our lives?
And this is where that distinction just becomes so incredibly clear. It's not about choosing something good over something bad. It's about where you're investing your life. Are you focused on things that are permanent or things that you know are just going to fade away? It's all about what has ultimate value.
Now, this is the really crucial part. These heavenly treasures aren't, stuff you can hold. They're symbolic. These crowns that are awarded for your character, for your faithfulness. Things like your endurance, your self-control, your service to others. The point is, it's about who you become, not what you own.
Okay, now the sermon pivots and introduces its second major metaphor. And this is where it gets really fascinating. It comes straight from Matthew 6:22, the eye is the lamp of the body.
It's such a simple but really powerful idea, right? It connects what we literally see with our eyes to our whole spiritual condition. Basically, what you choose to fix your gaze on determines whether your life is filled with light or with darkness.
So, to make this whole spiritual vision idea feel real and not just abstract, the preacher does something brilliant. He tells a story, a really personal one, about getting glasses for the first time.
You know how it is. The story starts with this super relatable problem. He's squinting to read street signs. Things are a little fuzzy, but he hadn't really processed just how bad it had gotten. He was just living in a blurry world without even realizing it. So it plays out in this perfect 3-act structure. You've got the problem, the diagnosis, and then the big reveal. That moment of shock and profound clarity when he sees the world as it's meant to be seen. And that moment, that feeling of, wow, I can see, that becomes the core analogy for a spiritual wake-up call. It's not some slow, gradual thing. The sermon presents it as this sudden, dramatic shift where the world just snaps into focus.
And here's the big payoff for that whole analogy. Having a clear focus on God. It's like putting on these corrective lenses for your life. The struggles don't just disappear. The losses are still there, but with that clear vision, they're seen through a new lens of strength and hope. Your life gets filled with light instead of darkness.
So in the final section, all of these threads get woven together beautifully. It argues that this new clarity, this brand new pair of spiritual glasses, is the absolute key to keeping that undivided heart we talked about at the beginning.
And this really gets us to the main point. You can't live a divided life. You can't have one foot in heaven and one on earth. Real obedience to that one master requires a single, sharp focus. And that means you have to make a choice to keep those God-focused glasses on.
But here's the thing. This isn't some one-time decision you make and then you're done. No way. The sermon makes it super clear that keeping your spiritual vision sharp is an ongoing process. It's like needing an eye exam every year to check your prescription. It takes regular checkups and real commitment to keep that focus.
And that's how it all wraps up. The sermon takes those 2 huge metaphors, treasure and vision, and turns them right back on the audience. It doesn't give you an easy answer. Instead, it just leaves you with this really powerful, challenging question that sums up the entire message. Where is your treasure and what is your focus?